Hi, I'm Doug Austin, and I'm the editor of eDiscovery Today, the daily blog about eDiscovery, information governance, cybersecurity, data privacy, and artificial intelligence trends, best practices, and case law. Welcome to another edition of eDiscovery Today's Thought Leader Interview series, where we interview thought leaders in eDiscovery and related legal technologies. Today, we're conducting another thought leader interview by video. And we have a guest who's been an industry pioneer in the application of technology and analytics to the legal community with over 3 decades of experience in artificial intelligence and statistics. Welcome, Dave Lewis. Hi, Dave.
Welcome, Doug. Thanks, Doug.
You bet. So before we get started, let me introduce Dave. Dave is widely respected as a researcher, inventor, writer, educator, and thought leader in legal technology and academic computer science. He's led innovative efforts in AI ethics, including co-chairing the eDRM working group on AI ethics and bias. And he's just today announced the next step in his career as Chief Scientific Officer at NextPoint, which is an eDiscovery Today partner. So I'm very excited about that. So, ready to get started, Dave?
Absolutely.
Great. So Dave, first of all, congrats for the announcement of your role with NextPoint. I'm curious, why did you choose NextPoint, and what are you looking to accomplish there?
Well, actually, surprisingly, NextPoint was the second company I ever consulted for in the e-discovery space, way back in like 2012. I've known Rocky, the CEO, from the Chicago. I used to live in Chicago and known him from the Chicago e-discovery scene for a long time. So I've always had a huge amount of respect for NextPoint. I've actually consulted for him at a couple of different points in my career. And so when I, thought about it, and I've had an interesting interlude on the services side, which I've been, was very proud of what we did with Red Great Data, which we sold recently. I commented to many people over the years that, the past couple of years that, I really should have done this job in an e-discovery boutique consulting company before I actually was at BrainSpace, because I understand much better how the actual use of the software in large litigation system. So, when I, decided I want to go back to full time to design the software, NextPoint was the natural place to go. I just had huge respect with what Rocky's done with the company. They've got a great user base, and they've been cloud from the beginning. So one's not dealing with the, okay, we got a server product and we've got a on-prem product and we've got a cloud product. And so, past that. So I'm just super excited. I love the people there, interacted with them a lot.
They do have great people there, and forgive the pun, but I guess this is the next point in your career.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I couldn't resist.
Yeah, yeah, well, I've
So.
had several people writing me saying, "Oh, what are you doing next?" I said, "That's right."
There you go. Very good. Well, you also put an entry in LinkedIn saying for 1 week saying you are officially a slacker
Yeah,
in
officially a
between
slacker.
gigs. So there you
That's
go.
talking
That
to me.
was that those are always good to have in your resume as well to show you can actually have some downtime once in a while. But you only got a week, so there you go. But I'm sure they want you to start as quickly as you can. So, for those who don't know about NextPoint, you've already told us a little bit about them. Can you tell us a little bit more about them and their place in the legal technology and e-discovery industry?
Well, I suspect you could probably do that as well as I can. But they're one of the reasons I'm excited about going there is that they kind of cover a big piece of the EDRM all the way from ingestion to trial prep. And that's exciting to me. I'm really looking forward to kind of working more broadly across the EDRM on AI applications. They were kind of one of the first to the cloud. They've got, something like 5,000-6,000 clients, and my understanding is they very much focused on the kind of small and mid-market to date, but they've been growing into the larger law firms and enterprises. So that excites me. You've got, very broad user base there and some incredible customer loyalty. They've got 98, 99% retention or something. So it's a very, and also, their philosophy, their attitude has always appealed to me. You know, there's no BS, there's no hype. I'm somebody who started out their career as a scientist. I've focused a lot of my academic work on kind of rigorous evaluation and whatnot, and so um, there's a very good match just with sort of my personal philosophy about under promise, over deliver, and really make clients happy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think they've had a strong focus on education with some of the things they've done, the webinars, co-publishing Tom O'Connor's book, eDiscovery for the Rest of Us that they've done this year. So yeah, that's one of the things that they were a natural fit with eDiscovery today as well as a partner. So definitely great people there, and congrats again on that move. So let's talk some trends here for a moment. Obviously everybody's talking about generative AI these days. So where do you think we are with adoption of Gen AI, and where do you think we'll head over the next year?
Yeah. So, there's been a few rollouts, which people are familiar with from the industry. There's been a couple of rollouts, kind of center of the EDRM as a tar replacement, and then also some, later in the EDRM on summarization timelines, things like that. It's still quite early days there. And, I think that there's, compared to say, a year ago when people were, you hear a lot less of like, oh yeah, all the lawyers are going to lose their jobs and whatnot. And I think there's a lot more understanding that this is a powerful technology, but it's a technology. And you're going to have to build applications around it. Those applications are going to have to be very thoughtful about the actual workflows that attorneys carry out, and where is the money actually spent, what's the actual ability to save money or speed up time to insight. And so I think we're going to be in a refinement stage, and if you think about really we've had sort of supervised learning for 20 years now, and people are still getting their heads around adoption of it, integration into workflows, how do you get the best ROI? And Gen AI is, if anything, and even it's a more subtle technology, both in terms of the power of what it can do and the power of things it can get wrong. So there's both, potentially big upsides in that, prior to Gen AI, people have been working on, say, summarization of documents since the early 1960s. And it just has never worked very well. And now it works really well with Gen AI, but it also makes mistakes, right? And so then the
Right.
question, you've got UI design and process design so that people can get the power out of that, but that there's sufficient checks and balances built into the workflows that somebody's not going to stumble into making some statement in court and you realize, oh wait a minute, nobody ever actually checked this, right? So I mean, I think that's one of the things I find really interesting about this is that the system design, all the way from the underlying technology to the UI to the process design and whatnot it's just a more subtle in process there with kind of big rewards, but also opportunities to really step in it if you're not careful. So I think I mean I certainly expect we'll be seeing over a number of years how that's going to roll out in legal, and where the actual monetary savings are going to be from that.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's a lot still to be determined about exactly how that's going to go. So yeah, we're just getting started with it. And it we're concluding our State of the Industry Report survey tomorrow. So we'll have some sentiment from the industry about where they stand with it. So
Oh, I gotta fill that out, right?
yeah, Just a reminder,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, we've seen a lot of potential, but we've seen a lot of caveats and challenges with generative AI. So, what challenges do you specifically see, and what do you think we need to do to overcome those challenges for Gen AI to reach its full potential?
Yeah, I mean, the two that are, I think, looming largest right now are one, there's kind of cost. The cost challenge will go away over, whatever, the next 2, 3 years, four maybe. But right now, it's just running the per doc price you have to pay, or even like per piece of a doc price you have to pay, is still make that so that you can't just sort of like on millions of documents run Gen AI and pre-compute everything in the hope that somebody's going to use this on 10 of the million documents or something like that, right? So you still have
Right.
to think a lot more about both what you expose to the user and which users you expose something, just permissions and things. You don't want somebody to press a button and not realize they're spending $50,000. So there's user, and those are temporary problems, right? 5 years
Sure.
from we won't talk about them. um, but you have to think about it now, right? We want this on now. And then the other one is, I mean, I guess the one of the names that goes under is hallucinations, but it's, just more generally that it is still really important to keep in mind these systems don't actually know anything, right? They're doing incredibly um, subtle and complicated transformations of language, which are informed by models that are built on fantastic amounts of stuff, text from the internet. But at the end of the day, they don't. There's no underlying there that they really know what they're doing. And so, one of the issues, is just how do you guide this to something that's maximally useful? And that mostly gets talked about in the context of prompt engineering right now, but you really have to think of it in a kind of broader systems framework, right? You want to design UIs and workflows that make it, more likely that you're going to get good material out than bad, or useful material out than irrelevant material. And then, as I said earlier, you've got to have process around this that lets people check the information. So like if you get a summary or some other sort of aggregate out, or timeline, or whatever it is, linking back to source documents is going to be really critical there, because the stakes are high in legal cases. You can't have people sort of stumbling into the same things that invented.
Right.
So I think then, that it, and as I was saying, I mean, any of these systems, they're going to be 5% Gen AI and 95% just traditional software engineering and UI design, right? You've got to make the ability for not just that you can press a button, say, and get a nice summary out or get a nice priv log out or something like that, but that you can make it easy for somebody to then vet the aspects of that they need to vet. And that's very classic kind of software and user interaction.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of use the simple definition of Gen AI models as really powerful word predictors, because in essence that's kind of what they're doing, right? I mean, they're predicting what the right words are, the string of words to respond to a prompt, but they don't have there's no underlying knowledge behind that. Certainly, and yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've observed is just because it links to a document and says the document says something doesn't mean it always says what it says it will
Right.
say. So
Yeah.
all sorts of things to be checked there,
Yeah.
to kind of make sure that it is, that the results are what they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, if the idea is that, let's just say it's a long document like a deposition, and you're going to produce, some summary of that. Um, but then you're going to have to vet that summary, right? Well, you're not saving anything if somebody still has to go through the whole 300 pages of the
Right.
deposition to verify the short summary, which supposedly was saving them all this time. So you've got to have really good navigation back that, is letting someone with high probability look at only a small set of the document to verify the facts that have come out in the summary. So that's, that's why I sort of, I think there's a bit of a vibe you somehow get that, Gen AI um, is getting you out of traditional software engineering because, okay, well, we're going to write this English language prompt and then we'll iterate on the prompt and whatnot.
Right.
And yeah, there's a component of that, but there's a much larger component of sort of just classic software design, which is going to have to be done if it's going to reliably save people money in a safe way.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So obviously, one of the things people have been talking about is TAR and generative AI. So what about TAR? Do you see Gen AI complementing TAR or maybe eventually replacing TAR?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple ways to think about that. I think we can safely assume that there's going to be generative AI playing a big role in TAR. I mean, just one thing to say is the arguably the place that the generative AI has had the biggest practical input, practical impact is improving, I guess, what I would call transduction technologies, speech recognition, OCR, handwriting recognition, object identification in images and whatnot. And just, it's sort of under the hood, right? That you now in AWS or Google or Azure, you can call on very, very powerful recognition technologies, which are just, notably better than we did before. And all that stuff then can be input into a TAR system, right? I would say, right now we're still at the point where, people typically kick images out to a separate manual workflow. I think we're going to see a lot more incorporation of images right in the same review workflow because we're going to have extracted sufficient content that we can do meaningful prioritization. But, I mean, with respect to one of the questions, are people going to stop labeling data? And you're going to write prompts, you're not going to say yes or no to examples. And I think no for two reasons. One is it's simply sometimes easier to convey to a system, what you want produced and what you don't by giving examples of that, right? Because you would do that even with a human being. If you think about how do we train, human review teams, you'll often have kind of a bunch of examples of paragraphs that talk about this, paragraphs that talk about irrelevant, paragraphs that talk about this and not relevant, like that. So, right. But then the other piece of it is, Gen AI is not going to let us escape validation, right? I mean, right. If anything, we're going to need more and more subtle validation because the opportunities for strange things to go wrong are large, right? So you're going to have the safety net there. So I'm a bit biased because I've a lot of my work over the years has been on evaluation of TAR workflows and sampling and things like that. But I don't think it's going to go away. I think evaluation is going to get more subtle and different, right? I mean, I think one of the interesting things that and obviously there's a huge amount of work in the AI community understanding hallucinations and the kinds of errors that Gen AI systems make, but we'll probably have more focused evaluation that it's trying to rule out, say, particular classes of errors there. So yeah, I mean, it's going to play a big role. I don't see traditional TAR, disappearing anytime soon, and I definitely don't see labeling examples disappearing. Sorry, folks.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, and I don't know why others would, but it will be interesting to see what happens. You mentioned images, and that's one of the things I think is least talked about with the Gen AI technologies, and it's pretty cool. It's the image recognition capabilities. I posted a post where I took a picture of my cluttered kitchen counter and it recognized everything right down to the Nutella, a container and what have you. And I was really impressed with its capabilities. And that's always been one of the big banes of existence for e-discovery professionals is you always had to move those images to a separate workflow. And now you've got a lot more technology you can apply to that.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be highly specific to the application in that, um, there are kinds of situations, say construction litigation or something, where, you've got an accident at a work site or something. And like, you really want to know, okay, here's all the pictures that have got, the big yellow backhoe or something like that. Right. And so I think the image processing is going to be fantastic for that. You can also imagine applications where, just having a list of the objects in a still photo, say, is not going to tell you what you really need because there's something more about the emotional content or why it
Of
shows.
course.
So it
Right.
won't be a complete solution any more
Right.
than traditional tar was a complete solution to language processing. But it's definitely going to be a big step forward.
Right. Yeah. No staples, easy button with any of this stuff, of course. But yeah, but certainly a step forward. So we talked a lot about Gen AI. What other technological developments in e-discovery do you see that people aren't talking about enough, but should be?
Well, people, I think I always come back to short messages for that. And it's not that people haven't talked about short messages. I mean, any given day you any given week you'll probably find a podcast something about short messages on it. But it is, given the importance of it and the growth and the volume of short message data that shows up in litigation, there still aren't really great tools out there yet. And I think that's certainly one area I'm very much interested in working on at Next Point, because I think we don't have a solution yet. I think Gen AI will be part of the solution there in the sense that we've got much better ability with Gen AI now to identify similarities. I mean, so just to think about one of the problems that comes up a lot is you'll have like a Slack channel or something with multiple simultaneous conversations. And because the individual messages are so short, it's very hard for traditional like keyword techniques and whatnot to kind of like deconvolve. Okay, like, all right, these 17 messages are one conversation, and these 5 are, talking about the company picnic or something like that, right? So I think that's a very rich area for. I mean, it's obviously not going to be just Gen AI. We've got who are the participants and the times and things like that. But I think that's going to be an area where Gen AI is going to be another tool to try to solve what that very hard problem is. But yeah, that's one I think is, even to the extent it's talked about, it's probably underappreciated how far we have to go to really, and because it kind of breaks the mental model, right? I mean, it breaks the model of one document is one record, is one thing that gets produced and whatnot. You just can't think about it that way with short messages. You have to think about the data model differently. You have to think about what gets produced there.
Yeah, well, and that's to me, it's things like short messages that I hope will someday push us to think more about this as data and not documents,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's really what it is. And so, that I think is going to be, that approach is going to make a big difference too, I think. So, for sure.
yeah. And I think hopefully I have the eternal hope that we'll get past the e-discovery is about producing tens of thousands of documents, right? That we can get to something where both the technology and the legal climate, really lets people be working with much smaller amounts of meaningful information. I mean, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, when I first started doing this stuff, I would have said, "Oh yeah, we'll be there by now." Okay, well, we're not there yet, right? It all goes slower than we hope. But it just feels like at some point it can't make sense to be turning over hundreds of thousands of documents like this.
Yeah.
And and I'm, I guess part of how I'm I can't wave the magic wand and change the way that it plays out in the legal system. But I am very much looking forward at Next Point to getting more involved on the sort of farther right parts of EDRM and the sort of deposition summaries and trial preparation and which is the point at which you become aware that no, you're not going to present 100,000 documents in court. You're going to boil this down to much more condensed, meaningful information. And so, one hope would be as the technology gets better and better on that end, and we incorporate more AI, that maybe there's, less of a demand for the, turning over gigantic amounts of sort of marginally relevant stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your new colleague Brett Burney is the team leader on the right side of the EDRM 2.0 project. So
Yep.
yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what comes up with that. It comes out of that. So, so final question, is there anything else you'd like our audience to know about what you and NextPoint will be doing?
Well, I'm just super excited to, be looking at, where we introduce AI into, various parts of the ERM and, you know, I, I think there's just a huge, huge potential here. And, I think we're gonna get, you know, that dream of sort of getting much more meaningful answers out of these technologies and not just bunches of documents. As much as my career has been spent on classifying documents, it's pretty clear that that's not really what we want, and so yeah, I'm just really excited about moving it to the next level of getting answers out.
Great, and I'm excited about getting the opportunity to hopefully work with you, as since our companies are partners. So
Sure. Yeah,
looking forward to that.
I'm looking
So,
forward to it.
yeah, absolutely. So, I want to thank my guest, Dave Lewis of NextPoint. Thanks, Dave.
Next point Monday, right? We're talking while I'm still on vacation, but
That's
next
right. We are pre-recording. He's still a
we're
slacker at this
pre-recording.
point, but by the time this gets released, he will be officially at Next Point. So
Right.
so definitely thanks, Dave, for being a part of the Thought Leader interview series. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into another edition of eDiscovery Today's Thought Leader interview series. See you next time on the eDiscovery Today video network. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot, Doug.
Thank you, Dave.